Course management. Probably the biggest and most underrated thing you can do for your golf game is to know how to manage a golf course well. So, today we're going to start a little mini series talking about course management. And our first topic is going to be knowing your game and, more importantly, knowing your yardages. So, let's start with the basics. With every club in the bag, you need to know how far you full swing carry and how far the full swing total yardage is for every club in your bag. So this is going to be your average for these numbers. We're not going to take that one time we absolutely pure our 4-iron and never hit it the same way again. We're not going to take, the one time our 7-iron rolled out to 210 yards. We're taking the average, we're taking the typical, the normal, because this is what we're going to reference every time we have a full swing shot with any club in the bag. So we want to get as honest as possible with ourselves, get that carry number, get that total number. You're going to want to record this somewhere, either your notes app on your phone, either having a physical notebook with it in it. And these are going to change over time as we get better, as different things in our swing change. So this isn't going to be a set in stone thing. This is going to be something that you want to go and assess every once in a while. If you're missing a lot of greens short or long, you might want to readjust your numbers a little bit. But this is just something to keep in mind every time you play golf. You want to have a great idea of your carry and your total distance for every full swing club in the bag. So while we're doing this, we want to keep in mind the shot shapes that we're seeing with our full swing clubs. We're going to talk about this a little more in a future episode about knowing your game and kind of knowing your swing. But as we talk about yardages, it's very important to realize, if I'm hitting it a little thin and it's going this far, how far is it going to go when I hit it well? If I'm hitting it a little fat, maybe it's not going to go as far, it's going to spin less, but it's going to roll out. So these are important things to kind of realize when we're keeping track of these numbers. It wouldn't be a bad idea to keep track of, if I hit this club, how far does it go compared to, a pure golf shot? That's a great thing to keep in mind as we go through the entire bag. But just knowing your swing, knowing your game, and kind of knowing if I have the tendency to do this, what is that going to do to my numbers? So that is the absolute bare minimum that you should know about your golf game before you go out onto the golf course. We need to know every single club in the bag, where we carry it, what the total distance is, so that way if we have trouble, we can either know if we're going to try to carry the trouble, which clubs are going to get over it. If we're going to lay up short of it, we need to know which clubs are going to run out and not go into it. And then if we're going to lay up for a shot, or if we're looking to get a certain distance in, we need to know what club is going to give us the best chance at that next shot and the number that we want. So a lot of course management is really about thinking ahead, planning on the next shot, and planning on how we're going to link these shots together to make the best score possible on whatever hole we're playing. So now we get into the meat and potatoes of course management and knowing your numbers, and that is your distance wedges. So if you're not familiar with distance wedges, that is when we're hitting those wedges into the hole, into the green, where we might have a really awkward number and we don't know how to play it. This is those 50, 60, 70-yard shots that you might have a certain feel for and you might feel semi-okay about. But a lot of times, most golfers are just guessing at how to hit these shots. A lot of golfers don't have an exact feel. They don't have an exact number in mind. It's kind of like, oh, I have this 40-yard shot. I'm just going to kind of chip it up there, see what happens. So what we're trying to do here is give you a thought process and a feel for each of these numbers. And what I recommend is having a feel for anything between 20 and whatever number is your full swing, shortest club in the bag. So for me, if I'm full swinging my 60 degree, probably going to go around 100 yards. So every 5-yard increment between 20 and 100 yards, I have a feel for. It might not be the same club every time. It might not be the same kind of swing every time, but every single shot from outside of 20 yards, I will have a feel for. This is really crucial for scoring well because 75% of your shots are going to come from within 75 yards of the hole. And when you back that number up to 100, that number gets even bigger. So with the majority of our shots coming from these numbers here, we need to know exactly how we want to play these shots every time we see them. So now we get into the short game. And what I hear most is golfers say, if my short game was just better, I would have scored better. But then you go and you watch them practice, and if they do practice the short game, it's for a very short amount of time. It's just hitting one club around the green, just chipping around, no goal in mind, no objective, just kind of hitting chips, seeing how close they can put the ball to the hole. So what we really want to do is, if we want to know our golf game, we really need to know our short game. We need to know what kind of lie we're going to have around the green, how the club is going to react in that lie, how our swing is going to enable us to put the ball closest to the hole. So instead of using one club, we want to be able to experiment with multiple clubs. We want to experiment with different shots, all kinds of different stuff to really put more weapons into our arsenal that we can use to get up and down around the greens. So if I'm looking at my short game, what I have is I have a lob shot, something that I hit high in the air with a lot of spin to try to get the ball to stop quickly. This is going to be if I'm short-sighted. This is going to be if I have some crazy undulation on the green. If I don't want to put the ball on the turf very much, that's when I pull out the lob shot, and that's when I play it high and try to get it to check up around the hole. Then we also have bump and runs. Bump and runs are the most versatile, and they are probably the easiest thing that you can implement today to get better at golf. Your bump and run can be with any club in the bag. I've seen people use 4 irons. I've seen people use 8 irons. I've seen people use pitching wedges. I've seen people use 60 degrees to bump and run. Your bump and run is going to differ from every club in the bag. Every situation you have is going to require a different type of shot. So most of the times you're using this if it's a pretty straightforward chip. You don't want to bring the 60 degree into play. You don't want to bring that high shot because there's a very slim margin of error. This is a shot with a little wider margin of error. It's going to help you to score a lot better, and it's going to just be a lot more reliable than having to throw one up and get it to stop. This is the kind of shot where you need a little bit of green reading for, but all in all, it's a very reliable shot. You don't really have to really train it a ton once you get the basics down. All you got to know is what club you're going to use, how it's going to react out of the fairway, the rough, whatever it may be, and how you're going to score with it. And finally, we have my favorite to talk about, which is putting. So with putting, that is where I feel like you can pick up the most strokes on any competitor you play against. Because most people just don't practice putting, or if they do, they don't practice it correctly. How many times have you been, going up to the tee for a tee time and you're like, oh, I need to roll some putts. So you drop down 2 or 3 balls, you hit them to the closest pin, take the balls out of the hole, and then go to another pin. What are you training there? I mean, you're not working on speed, you're not working on line. All you're doing is just hitting putts and hitting them again. And when you get out on the course, you have no idea how hard to hit a certain putt. You have no idea, green reading, tempo. There's a million things that go into putting, and you're not training any of them when you practice putting like that. So when I practice putting, I like to mix in a lot of everything. I do a lot of putts where I just focus on my line. So I'll pick a short putt, nothing crazy. I'll go 3, 4, 5 feet out, and I'll just go around in a circle around the hole. I'll just hit putts, kind of working on my green reading, just feeling out the speed, getting good lines on my putts. And once I have that down, that's when I start to branch out. I'm going to branch out, hit a couple, 50-50 range putts. For you, that might be 5, 6, 7 feet. For the pros, it's 8. So if you're outside of 8 feet, chances are you're too far out. But we want to work on these like short to mid-range putts that are in that 50-50 range and just get comfortable with them. Because when you're sitting over a 7-footer in a match with one of your friends, you want to have the confidence to bury that in the back of the hole and just ruin his day. So that's my big thing with putting, with line. Now, if we go to tempo and speed and lag putting, that is where you're really going to separate yourself. If you can lag your putts within 10% of the total distance to the hole, you're going to become so much of a better putter. So for a 30-foot putt, if you can put it within 3 feet every time, your scores are going to drop so much. From 40 feet, if you can put it within 4 feet, that's insane. That's incredible. 50 feet, 5 feet, if you can do that, you're going to significantly drop the number of 3 putts you have, and the scores are going to go way down. So the way I like to train lag putting is I like to go pace off a putt. I know exactly how far it is. I drop the ball, I hit 1 putt, and I go and I finish it out. And if you can make that 2 putt, that's great training, and that's great practice for when you're on the course trying to convert a long 2 putt to save par. So when you're doing this, you don't want to, rush into it. You want to go through your same routine as you would go through on the green, and you just want to, take your time, go through your process, and really focus on converting these 2 putts. This is going to be as crucial of a skill as getting up and down or hitting greens. This is what's really going to help you drop those scores. All right, so that's going to conclude course management, knowing your game. We're going to have another one of these coming up soon, which is going to be more about knowing your swing opposed to knowing like your yardages. But a lot of the topics we touched on here, we will also be touching on there as well. So stay tuned for that. As we conclude knowing your game, the big important things to know is, you got to know your carry and your total distance for every club in your bag. We don't want to be standing over a 160-yard shot and not knowing which club to take. A lot of factors really go into this, lie, wind, how you're hitting the ball that day. A million different things can affect it, but we want a nice solid average and a nice solid baseline that you can rely on every single time you have to choose a club. So then getting into our distance wedges, every club between 20 and whatever number is your, shortest wedge. That's what we need to know. And we need to know in 5-yard increments how we're going to play these shots when we see them. Because I guarantee you, if you're watching this video, you have had some kind of awkward shot somewhere between 20 and 100 yards where you're not sure how it's going to go. You just kind of take a guess at it and just kind of see what happens. And a lot of times you can get away with it, but when you can't, that's when it really impacts your score. So moving on to short game, we really need to know how to hit different types of shots out there. So, we talked about lob shots, we talked about bump and runs. There's plenty of other shots that you can hit as well, but knowing kind of how far it's going to go, knowing how much it's going to spin, how much it's going to run out, and how it's going to change when we're in the fairway versus the rough or any other area that we're in around the golf course. So knowing these things, knowing how the ball is going to react on the green is really going to help us put the ball closer and get up and down a lot more. We're going to save a lot of pars and those scores are going to drop. Lastly, we talked about putting. Putting line is going to be very crucial, especially on the short putts. If we can take those 50-50 range putts and if we can convert those to 60-40, maybe even 70-30, that's really going to drop those scores. It's going to make you feel a lot more confident when you get on the green. And all of a sudden, you're going to see lots of pars on the scorecard opposed to those bigger numbers. Next, we talked about speed. Speed is probably the most underrated thing you can do for your golf game is really develop a good speed training regimen. So what we want to think about with speed is putting that ball within 10% of the total distance of the hole. So if we can lag those putts into tap-in range, that's really going to improve our game. And if we pair that with line and with really improving that 50-50 range, that's really going to help us to convert those longer lag putts into 2 putts instead of 3 putts. Stay tuned for the next installment where we talk about knowing your swing. And as always, let's play for par.